Well, can anyone see me and hear me? I think I can. I've just had to change some of the settings on the microphone, so I hope it's all working. If you can hear this and you can see it correctly, if you just pop a little comment in the live chat, just so I know everything's working, and assuming it is, I will see you in approximately 10 minutes and 15 seconds. See you then. Hello, good evening and welcome to tonight's live stream. It's good to have the regular faces in the chat already and one or two new faces in there as well. So if you are new to watching the live stream and you have access to YouTube's live chat, then do say hello in there so that I know that you're watching. And right, so let's just get on with the show. This is actually part 2 of last week's show. Last week's show went on forever. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It was because I'd got so many great photos that you folks had actually submitted to the Facebook group that I didn't want to leave them out, but eventually time got the better of us. So those of you who I said I was going to talk about your images last week, you're going to get priority. I'll talk about your images this week. To make sure that you're the head of the queue. I think I'll get through everything this week. Hope so. But let's get things moving anyway. So introduction to anyone who's new to the shows, and it appears that there may be one or two new faces on here. I reckon there's a couple of names I'm seeing in the chat that I don't normally see on the chat here. Graham, nice to see you on the show. I don't know whether you've been stalking me in the past, lurking. And hello, Phantom Janitor 1, whoever that is. Sue. Yes, it's Sue. Right, okay, nice to see you, Sue, on there. Great to have you all here. So, yeah, if you don't already know, these are weekly shows, 7:30 every Sunday night, and this is number 34. Haven't missed a week in 34 weeks. Wow. I'm amazed I've kept that going. And they sit on YouTube for a long time before I edit them down. The aim is they will all eventually get edited down. I've just got one or two other pressing tasks that I've needed to deal with rather than editing this lot down. But when eventually they will end up with a cut down version on YouTube, a full version in my academy, and the highlights will end up on YouTube on the appropriate channels on there. So if you don't already know, if you've got any photography related questions, well, any other questions as well, but I'm only promising to answer the photography ones. I'll have a go at the others, but I can't guarantee. Any questions, stick them in the live chat. I monitor that as we go through the evening to see who's on there and what's going on. If you're watching this on the replay, and I know there's quite a few of you do watch on replay, can't tune in live on 7:30 on a Sunday night because of other commitments. If you're watching on there, do me a favour, stick a comment in the comments so that I know that you've seen it, because sometimes I just wonder whether the replays are actually being watched. I can see the stats to a certain extent, but it's just nice to know who's watching it on there. But use it for any questions that you've got on there. And if you are new and haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do that. Please comment on any videos that you watch and go and hit that like button. Right, according to this, half of you haven't hit the like. Oh, one of you's just gone on there. Right, that's 9 out of 16 people watching have hit the like button. So the rest of you, go and hit me like button. That will help everyone else know that these live streams are worth watching. And if you get the chance, do share links to the show to let other people know all about them and what's going on. And as ever, big thanks to everyone who has been doing that. I really appreciate it for getting the message out there. And I know it has made a difference. We've got a few extra people watching both live and on the replay because of it. So thanks for that. Right, the other way in which you can help is, anyone want to buy me a cuppa? Yeah, you've heard of BuyMeACoffee. It's a website where you can go and give a small donation to your favourite YouTubers, the people who actually help you, things like that. If you think these shows are worthwhile and you just want a way to say thank you, you can head over there and effectively virtually buy me a cup of tea. And this week's cup of tea is brought to me by John Kiss. So thanks, John, for the cuppa this week, and I really appreciate it. And it's just a small little token donation. If you want the link to it, it's down below in the show notes as well. And thank you for those who have been buying me a cuppa. You'll get your name on the mug in the coming weeks. All right, so Facebook group, I mentioned it earlier. I have a Facebook group. There's the link over my shoulder, again also down in the notes, and that's where we continue the conversation during the week. It's where I set a theme for the week which ties in with the Sunday night live stream, and where we're encouraging each other with our photography, sharing hints and tips, providing feedback on images and things like that. It's a really friendly place, and we don't typically have any problems or snide remarks like that. So it's a safe place where you can share your images, you can ask questions and can get feedback. So it's also the place I let people know what's going on with me and with what's coming up with the live stream. I have a newsletter. It hasn't gone out for a few weeks yet. Again, it's because every time I'm about to publish something, what I'm trying to write and publish is about to change. I've got something that I'm trying to write on what I'm allowed to do at the studio, and I was going to do it for this weekend, but then a certain little battle is going on between Manchester and Westminster about what tier of lockdown we should be in, what sort of restrictions are going to be on us. And I thought, you know what, the moment I actually write this and publish it, it's going to be wrong. So I've held back on it again. I'll see what I can do during the week for that. Yeah, there's general hints and tips in there. If you want to sign up for it and haven't already done so, links on the screen and again down below in the show notes for this. So what have we got on the show this week? I've got another one of the 2020 challenge videos. This is the last one that I've been sent, although I know at least one other person, mentioning no names, Peter, hasn't sent me their photos yet. So if I get another one, there may be another one next week, there may not be. But this week, it's the turn of Kev Pack. We're carrying on our theme of black and white conversions, and I'm looking at how we do that in different ways. I'll be doing some live conversions. Some of the images I've not even tried converting beforehand, so you'll see how I get on with those. And I'm going to do conversions in Lightroom, in Photoshop, and in Snapseed. On there, and I'll be providing some feedback on your images as well as the live Q&A if any questions come up. I haven't got any specific ones to answer this week. So Q&A, anything in the chat from Q&A? I haven't seen anything. There is some images I've been asked to provide feedback on, and I mentioned it last week. I am not going to do it tonight. I will do it next week, simply because I don't want to run the risk of running out of time tonight on all the black and white stuff, because I've had to postpone a whole stuff on there. Do remember, if you are putting questions in, and we've got another Q&A section right at the end, there is a slight time delay, so don't wait for me to say, right, we're into the Q&A. If you start typing at that point, I'll look and go, oh, there's no questions there, and finish off the live stream. It did happen once, that. If you want to email me any questions during the week, that's the public email address to get hold of me, and I can then deal with them in a future live stream. So, black and white conversions. If you want to know in a bit more detail the principles and the methodology for black and white conversion that I use, then do take a look at last week's live stream. It's up on YouTube. It'll remain there for goodness knows how many weeks. But I will cover most of those principles as I go through these live conversions tonight. But if you want the more methodical approach, it's on there. And as the notes say, this week it's all about the live conversions. Now, the big point I made last week was because this came as a question. So what are the rules for black and white conversion? And I said, it's not about rules, it's about tools, about the different tools that are available to us. And the only rule that I apply is get your composition, get your exposure right before you do your black and white conversion. Black and white conversion is not about solving the problem of a bad photo, making it black and white to be a good photo. It's about getting it right first, then enhancing a photo by making it black and white on there. So the tools are no one size fits all, and it depends on what platform you're working on. And I'm going to show you conversions tonight, if I can remember how to do them all, in Lightroom, Photoshop, and on my mobile phone. Hopefully the technology will work tonight. I've got a bit of software I purchased to be able to show you what's going on my phone as we do the live stream. Fingers crossed that that works for us a little bit later on. So, what makes a good black and white image? Well, first of all, I would say typically, and these are guidelines, and just because I say this is what normally is, someone will point me to a photo and say, well, that works differently. Yes, but this is the typical thing. A full range of brightnesses, some good contrast in there, and of course, as I've said already, good composition. If you've got those, you're halfway there to having a good black and white image. So let's start off with where I finished last week and look at your images, the ones I didn't manage to do last week. And so let's pick up at that point, and then I'll do some conversions after that. The two will all link together anyway. Right, let me get Lightroom loaded up on here with the right set of images, which are... I know you can't see it, it's just while I'm getting it all set up. Right, so now, there we go, Lightroom, and a whole set of images that people submitted last week. And this isn't an in-depth feedback session, it's just I want to sort of pull out a few points on some of these, and things that have worked and things which I think might work differently. So let's start here. Actually, I'm going to go into the develop module. I'm going to maximize the screen as well on there and get some of the info up. Yeah, this is from Terry McNamara, one of his black and white conversions, black and white images. Nice shot, Terry, but I don't think it's one of your best, to be honest. For me, I'd like to see a little bit more light in the face. As ever with images, the eye is drawn to the brightest part. So when I look at this, my eyes immediately go to her shoulder and the arm there, whereas I think it ought to be going to the face. And I've only just now spotted the money in the garter as well. So some of the more interesting bits I'm finding I'm not being drawn to with this. So I would like to see a little bit more exposure on the face. So what I'm going to just try, just to see whether this works, very low flow, and this isn't going to be as good as doing it on the original raw file, but just adding that little bit more light on the face. I'll just try bringing that up just a touch on there so that my eyes are going more to her face on this. I think I'd probably just highlight that just slightly, again, to draw my eye to it. It's personal preference. And I feel a little bit awkward actually saying about Terry's work, there's things I don't like about it, because actually when it comes to this sort of genre, if I had to highlight someone and say fantastic images, Terry would be the person I'd point you to on there. But this particular one, I don't think is one of your best, Terry. Sorry, on there. He'll probably come back to me on that. I know he doesn't watch live, so I'm safe for a couple of hours at least. On the other hand, this one, Terry, is an absolutely cracking image. Really like it. And this sort of brings out the point I was making with the idea that the face is the brightest area. The eyes immediately go to her face on there, and it really shows up and works. So the two, very chalk and cheese, and I think this one's a great image. It's a good black and white conversion as well, because we've got that lovely set of tones in there. We've got the dark colours, the dark tones, and the lighter areas, that full range. There's a nice bit of contrast in it as well. So great shot on there. I'm on my monitor, and it might be, I was going to say because of my studio lights, I've just realised something. The studio lights aren't actually on. Just a tick. Let's get those back, that's better. It looks a little bit dark on my monitor, but I suspect that's my monitor because the other day I managed to knock the this monitor has got a button for auto setup, wonderful, which undoes all my calibration of the monitor. So I need to recalibrate it. I've just not had the chance to do it yet. The couple of times I've thought about doing it, as you probably know, monitors should be on for half an hour or so before you try calibrating them. And at the time I've been here thinking, oh, I'll do that. The monitor hasn't been on long enough. Now I got tied up with other work, so it's just not happened yet. So it might be that, but I'm losing a little bit of detail in the darks on there. Suspect it's my monitor. Let's move on. Hello, we've got somebody who's in the chat on here. Both in terms of subject and in terms of photographer, both on here. Right, Sue, a nice shot of Graham here. Again, some nice tones in it. I have a feeling this might have been taken at one of the events here, but I'm not sure with that. I've had Graham in a few times. The only thing I would say about this is watch the crop. Again, it looks very dark down below. I'll go full screen. At this point, at the bottom, and I think I'm losing detail there. I don't think it's really adding that much. I'd be tempted just to bring the crop up a little bit higher, a little bit tighter on this, and actually to center Graham in the shot like that. So I would go with that. I think it could possibly take just a fraction more contrast as well. Not a huge amount needed, but I would give it a little bit more, maybe a little bit of clarity. Now, what you could do with this image, because it'll take it, is you could whack the clarity quite a long way up. And with Graham's features, that works quite well, but I would also try using an adjustment brush, so that's K, and I would take out, let's reset everything, double click on the word effect, take a little bit of that clarity down on there, and just take it down a fraction on the face, but leave the clarity on the clothes, and just a little bit more, a little bit like that. And I would do that sort of effect with it. It's quite a stylized look, but I think because of the creases in there, I think it will take it on there. Again, with all these, it's a personal preference. Some people will prefer the approach, that much softer, less less contrasty approach, but that's the sort of thing I would do with this image, just to add that little bit of punch to it on there. And I think, yeah, I'm now pretty sure this possibly was at my studio, because the two models were working together on one of the events. So much softer look on here, and I quite like it. I just think it needs, looking at the histogram, everything's quite dark on there. I'd be tempted just to punch a little bit more light into it on there. But as a contrast to the other image, I'd leave this one with those softer tones in it that you've got. The skin softening looks good on there with it as well. Not that much was needed on there, but nice image, and a much better crop on that one, Sue, than the other. Nice central, and we've not got dead area at the bottom. It balances bottom and top and both sides, so really nice image on that. I don't think this one's quite as strong, and again we've got I would say the crop could come down just slightly at the top there, not by much, but just a little bit, and maybe that little bit more light. I would possibly be tempted with that adjustment brush of trying to get, and I'm going to reset everything here. Let me go full screen so you can see. I would like to try and get a little bit more light into the eyes, so I'm just going to bring that up. And again, I've got the flow very, very low, which means I can just do little strokes, very gently lift the eyes just a little on there. It's a little hard. I mean, that hat does tend to make it a little bit difficult to get the light in the eyes. But I think that's enough. Just that very slight lightening of the eyes on it. So with something like that. Again, nice image, nicely done on there. Just watch the hand here on the crop with it. Just that little bit of hand looks a little awkward. Maybe just bring that up slightly just to hide that. But yeah, nice image over there. Kev, this is an interesting one. A bit of reportage on it. Difficult to say too much about it. It's the thing that bothers me with this one, Kev, is that the focus seems to be on the sewing machine rather than on the person. They appear just a little bit soft on here. And obviously I haven't got the shooting data because this has come off Facebook, where I lose all that sort of information. But I like the Dutch angle on it. That works nicely. And the toning, it looks like you put a little bit of a split tone on there. Again, that works, but it does appear like the sewing machine's sharp and the subject is very slightly soft on there. So just watch that focus point with that on here. Now, I'm going to sound like a broken record here. And I'm coming very much to the conclusion, it's a personal taste thing, but I don't like these underexposed shots. I know with you, Kev, this is deliberate. I know it's deliberate that you've done it this way. Personally, I'd much prefer it where I can see the image, maybe a tad more contrast, something like that. Nice detail in putting the smoke in on the gun on there, presumably. I'm not sure whether that's been taken with a smoke paintbrush in Photoshop, or whether that's been done with photographing smoke patterns and then superimposing them, one or the other. But personally, I'd prefer to see that a little bit more light on the final image than you had there. But it's a nice composition. I like the gangster feel to it, nice pose, lighting's good, nice broad lighting on this side with it. and good pose on there. This one again, broken record time. I like to see a bit more light in there, but it's a nice shot. And again, the nice smoke coming from the gun. I particularly like the pattern behind, the way you've used that to give separation from the background. There's a little hint of a rim light down here that works nicely. On here, have I got no shooting data with it? And the face is the brightest part of the image, so the eye goes straight to there, and then the eye explores the rest of the image, the hat, the gun, and everything on there. Really nice shot, and you've worked really well to get that light into the eyes underneath the rim of the hat, which is, as we saw on one of the earlier images, it can be quite tricky to do that. So well done with it. For me, just that little bit of extra exposure. Again, it's personal preference on there. This is an interesting one, and again, a little bit on there. I like the fact that this is narrow lighting, Peter. It's quite an eerie sort of image. It's I like the darkness of it. And I like the use of the negative space with it as well in there. It makes you wonder, where is this person, what's going on here? And nice soft lighting on the background. It goes gradually into the darkness. I'm wondering about how deep that shadow is. I think it's fine. I think that's fine on there. It's just it's a good conversion. It's got that range of brightnesses. We've got the bright areas, we've got the dark areas. It's fairly contrasted. So for black and white, yeah, nice shot. Les, I don't know whether you watch the live streams, but threw this one in, a masked figure. Looks like a Green Man type of figure. Again, I just wish I had the shooting data. The only thing I would... Oh, that's interesting. I clicked on it and it suddenly became sharper. I'll do this full screen. Right, what are we? Are we 100%? Yeah, that's 1:1 on there. Yeah, it is fairly sharp. The focus appears to be more on the Hessian than the eyes, though, with it. Very interesting use of the mask. I'd like to see a little bit more of what's going on up here. Are they horns? Is it just some form of Hessian on there? And then some of the detail looks a little bit soft around the mouth with it. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. But yeah, interesting. And again, goes back to that range of brightnesses. Right. Richard. Now, Richard tends to watch on the replay. Excuse me a moment, folks. This shot of a pub in, I think he said it was Belfast, something like that. I really like the black and white conversion on it, and I've already said this in the forum about correcting the verticals. Now, it's a little bit tricky to do on here because there's not much space to be able to do it, but I'll just have a quick try at doing a vertical correction on here. We might get something with it, something like that. And then if I crop it, rather than letting Lightroom do the crop for me, I can just about get the important details in there with it. I prefer that sort of look where the verticals are straight rather than the distorted view. I mean, that's not a perfect correction on it by any means. And if I'd gone through the guided approach using the guided tool here, I could have got that a bit more accurate. But just to show the effect on there, and it's the first time I've seen it corrected. And I personally prefer the corrected version on that. Simon, thank you for submitting this. Now, I know this came after I'd posted things about converting flowers to black and white. The thing I'm going to comment about with this is I'm guessing a red rose from the conversion. Now, looking back to last week, or thinking back to the things I did last week, I don't know whether you remember how I showed how you can control the brightness of an individual colour within Lightroom when you convert. You'll see me do it anyway later on tonight. But one of the things I would try to do with this is, instead of going dark with it, I would go bright with this particular rose, because where do we want people to look? We want people to look into the centre of this. But at the moment, when you first look at it, the eye is being drawn to this bright area here. So I would try to control my black and white conversion so that this bright area is darker and the rose is brighter, and then the eye will go to that rather than to the bright area behind. But it's a nice idea, and as I said last week, I do encourage people to try converting flowers to black and white, because they can work remarkably well, perhaps something you wouldn't have expected to work. And if you're not sure what I mean by that, and you haven't seen last week's show, go and have a look at some of the examples I talked about in there. From Peter, a French villa, I'm guessing. My only comment about this is I'd like to, these lines, when you're shooting something like this, Peter, try to find the midpoint and stand there. You're just slightly off it by the looks of things, which means that the horizontals are tending to turn in. So if I correct it using the guided method, so that should be straight, and I'll get a line on here. That should be straight. You can see that's I think that works much better for the image. I put my controls away, and I would be tempted perhaps just to crop that down very, very slightly on there. Yeah, I've completely messed up your watermark, of course, but that sort of little tweak to it I think would work better for this image. Just straighten everything up. And I do like the fact that our center point's actually on the third line here, that everything's going in there, but just watch how you hold the camera, which would have avoided this, this sort of effect. So you can do it on the third lines, it does work, but you've just got to be careful with your angling to get those, it's all about getting the back of the camera parallel to the wall and the fireplace on there. I'd perhaps add a little bit more light into the back there, so just again, just lighten that up very, very slightly down there, because that's where we want the eye to go. We want to be drawn in. Just lighten that. So I would do that kind of tweak to that image. But it's a lovely shot. I can't tell how sharp it actually is on the version I'm working on with there. And just so you can see it all full screen. There we go. Right, next from Mark Sansfoy. I really like this. Now, I've been saying about those dark shadows and losing detail in them. This is one of those cases where the loss of detail actually makes the image work. So here, we come out of the adjustment brush. With the face, the fact that that shadow all blurs into one, with this particular one, because it's such a defined edge to it, and we've got defined edges elsewhere, it really works that when you see this image, the eye immediately goes to the person's face on there. So that really works with it. If I've got a slight complaint, it's the background over here. The person in the background walking there, I think, is just slightly distracting on there. So I'd be tempted to, if I was shooting it, I'd be keeping an eye on what's going on in the background as I was doing the shot, creating the shot, and trying to avoid that happening on there. But nice shot and a really nice black and white conversion. Although this is quite deep shadow, I can still see all the detail in there, and the brighter areas and the lines lead me into that detail as well. So nice image there, Mark. Another one of Mark's, again, same model, I think. I don't think this one's quite as effective. Again, it's personal preference, but I don't think the pose quite works for me, and always be a little bit careful about soles of feet pointing towards cameras. One of the reasons I say this is when I first started out in photography, I specialised in travel photography, and my region of specialism was the Middle East and the Arab world. And to Arabs, and to Muslims as well, I believe, it's quite offensive to have the sole of a foot pointing at someone. And I don't think it looks good on a photograph anyway, but certain people would find that, uncomfortable because of that small detail. So try and avoid it. Try and find a pose where that foot's down. Maybe just raise the knee up and get the toe pointing down just a little bit with that sort of thing on there. And if one of the things you may or may not remember about this whole business about the soles of the feet, they're seen as unclean. Do you ever remember when the famous image of the Saddam Hussein statue being pulled down, and what happened after it was pulled down? And it was on the floor. People were going up to it, taking their shoes off and whacking the statue with the shoes, and that's because of the association of it's the unclean, it's the dirty part, it's that kind of thing. It's really saying we hate this figure with that. So yeah, just a slight diversion, nothing to do with black and white, but just wanted to comment about that. Again, another nice image here. Looking at the image though, we can see, and this may be due to Facebook, we can see all the details lost there. If I hover over that, everything's, we've got plugged up blacks, a lot of detail lost there. And I'm not going to get it back on this version by increasing the exposure. But if you did that on the original image, you would be able to bring back some of the detail in the shadow there. I have one other comment about this image, Mark, and that is I misinterpreted this image when I looked at it, and the background, which is I know it's a sandstone rock face, but it looked like a lunar landscape, and I was going, what? Why is he dressed like that on the moon? It just looked like a lunar landscape and the black sky behind. Do watch these lines going through somebody's head, particularly when you've got somebody with dark hair like this, because we've got a line that goes through the rock with the shadow, continues through the head, and actually comes out the other side. It actually all joins up, and it's just a little bit distracting on there, so just be careful with that, Mark. But other than that, yeah, I think that might have been the last one in that set. Yes. So those were all the ones that I was going to do last week. So let me just get myself back to where I need to be on here. And I can look what's going on in the chat in my absence. So, right. Yeah, right, let's have a look at the chat. Sue confirming that those photos were at my studio, were here. Yeah, Kev saying that here's an old set and everything was a little bit soft on that. Yeah, and it was one of his old smoke shots, yes. Yeah, Kev hadn't seen the moonscape, and and now he can't unsee it. Oh dear. Sorry, I've just ruined Mark's photo there on that one with that. Right. Blimey, according to my stats, I'm just going to show you this. I've just lost all my viewers. Where have you all gone? Concurrent viewers 0. My graph's gone down to 0. I'm assuming that that's wrong and that the 20 concurrent up here is correct. I hope it is anyway. Right, so where were we? Let's just move on with what we're looking at. Okay, black and white conversions and Lightroom. And let's get on to that topic. Just to recap what I said last week, the various tools are available in Lightroom for conversion. Well, that's better, back up to 19 on there. Saturation slider gets used, but it's not the best tool at all on there. Yeah, it's my stats. Everyone's saying still here on that. Good. The saturation slider doesn't do a good job on conversions. Finding the right monochrome profile is probably the best way to go, and then using the black and white mix sliders to control the different brightnesses of the different colours that we've got in there and adjust with contrast, clarity and texture. And then, if necessary, some of the tone curves as well. And of course, it wouldn't be one of my conversions if there wasn't a vignette in there somewhere. Right, so let's go back over to Lightroom and I will pull up some of my images and hang on. Yeah. Ah, right, yes, okay, I know why. That's what I wondered where all that had gone. I was looking at. Right, let's get back to Lightroom. I'll find the images I want to talk about on this section, and we'll get going on some of these, which I think right, yes, okay. So back over in Lightroom and wait. Something odd going on here. I'm not able to get the full screen. I'll try that later. Right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick on a couple of images and do a black and white conversion in Lightroom using some of the tools. Now, I'm going to do this one of John's. Now, he didn't send it in for a black and white conversion. It was just one he'd included in the Facebook group. But I think this and the other one of John's will actually make a good black and white conversion in Lightroom. The other possible one is the one from Bill up here. Ooh, which to do? No, I'll do this one from John first and then decide. So let's go into the develop module. And all right, can I have full screen? Yes, I've got full screen. Thank you. Thank you, Lightroom. And I want to fit that in there. Right, now a bit of street photography. I'm assuming because this is a wide angle shot and you were quite close, John, that you have permission from this guy. It's an interesting shot. I think it will work nicely as a black and white reportage shot. Oddly enough, normally I would complain about things like the stick leaving the frame, but I think this one actually works with this shot on it. So first of all, let's get the exposure sorted. It just needs a little bit more exposure, a little bit more shadow. So The first thing with black and white conversions is always get the exposure right, get the image right before you start converting. So I've brought that up. We've got some blocked up areas here, and I'm blaming Facebook for that, and to a certain extent those, but I'm not so worried about the about that sky on there. Bring the exposure up just a slight touch. Right, I want to correct the verticals on it, so go down to transform. I'll see what auto does for me on this. Not bad actually. I'm going to go with auto, save myself a bit of time on that with it. And now the black and white conversion, I'm going to use that as my base, what we've got now as the base image, and I start off by choosing a color profile. So I'm going to browse and see what we've got, and we go down through here looking at the ones to find which is going to be closest to what we need for it. And black and white 7's quite a good one. I like that. Let's just go down a bit further and look at the different coloured filters on here. Now these are the equivalent of the filters you would use in classic film black and white photography, how using one of those filters would affect your image. I'm thinking maybe one of my old standbys. Oh, I think that's darkening it a bit too much as number 3, which is my old standby. What about 5? Yeah, I'm going to go with 5 on this. So I set 5 and close. So that's given me a starting point for my conversion. So now I go to the black and white sliders and I can control different parts of this image. So let's see what the red will give me. It's allowing me to bring a few other things up on there. I really want the coat to get a little, see what I can do with the coat, and that's on the orange sliders. Now as I'm doing that, I'm affecting a lot of things. I think up to probably about there. Now do before and after. Just looking at what colours we've got in here. Ah, right, we haven't got much colour in there to work with. We've got a little bit of colour in the case. So let me go to here. I was using the before and after key, which is the slash key, top left to bottom right on there. Let's see what I can do with that case. And again, I'm using this control just to target a particular set of colours. Now you can start to see the blocking come in. That's because it's a Facebook image, but I would just like to see. I think it needs a little bit of brightness to it, like that. So I think that's what I want to do with the colours. Now the next thing I would do with this is to try and work on that detail that we've got in there. So I'm going to go up and think about the clarity. And as I bring the clarity up, can you see how that really starts to work a little bit more on the contrast? And I need to bring, keep the highlights down just slightly and bring the shadows up just to keep that detail that's in there. And that's starting to work. Now at this point, what I want to do is I want to really darken this side of the image. So my natural reaction would be a vignette, but I think a vignette, we need more than just a vignette on this. So what I'm actually going to use is the Radial Filter, and I'm going to draw a circle to sort of encompass our subject on here. And don't worry the fact that I've got it all wrong. I always forget with Lightroom, because every different tool I use that you draw circles in, do them a different way. And I just need to reset everything on that. So we've got there, just pull that out slightly to that sort of thing. And I need to feather that. What I'm going to do is I also need to invert it. So invert that, and then with the exposure, oh fiddlesticks, I always get it the wrong way around. I need to just bring down that exposure very slightly. Oh, on there. And the feathering, you see, that's harsh, I want it nice and soft on here. Maybe just bring those edges out just a fraction and just bring the highlights down outside of it just a bit and the exposure down just a fraction. And now if I go back to here, don't bring the general exposure up for the man and the outer exposure down just a fraction on there. And let's just have a look what that appears with and without the thing. So that's without and that's with on there. So happy with that. Come out of there. And I think something like that for a reportage image works. So it's giving you an idea of some of the tools. Yes, it's a bit plugged up around here on there. But not a lot I could do about that. So let's have a look at the other images. Actually, just go back before and after. Before, after. And I think this is where one of those images that really works in black and white enhances it, gives that real reportage feel. And the stick just leading you straight in. It breaks all the rules, this image, but I actually quite like it. So, right, what else have we got that I was going to have a look at here in Lightroom? Yeah, Bill, one of yours. Let's do one of yours in here and develop. This should be an interesting one. It's one of the train. It's a train, steam train, and what we really need to do with this is we need to get the detail out of all the steam with it. So first of all, let's get the whole exposure right. It's not bad actually. I'd like to see a little bit more light, particularly in the shadows on the train. With that, maybe just something like there. And what I'm going to try, I'm going to play with texture, clarity and dehaze to see what effect they each have on the smoke. So one of the things to do with any tool like that, if you're not quite sure how it's going to affect the image, and I'll go full screen so you can see all this, just grab the slider and go all the way up. And you can see with the dehaze, that's actually done a lot of, it's brought out a lot of that detail we want in the smoke. It's wrecked everything else, but that's telling me that dehaze is a good possibility for sorting this out. Clarity, what will clarity give me? That's helped a little bit, but not as much as the dehaze on there. And what about texture? Well, texture's helped again a little bit on the on all the steam and the smoke. So now knowing that, and knowing that the dehaze will wreck everything else, what I'm going to do is I will go to the adjustment brush. So K or up here, this particular one, to do that. And what I now know is I'm going to put that flow reasonable way up, and I am going to put the dehaze up and the clarity up, and now I'm just going to paint in that detail that I want into the smoke to just sort of really bring that out. And I'm just trying to avoid everything else and just bring it in through here, paint it in where I think I need it, and just a little. Ooh, I don't like the fact that I'm getting colour up there, that green colour. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring the saturation down in that area where I've been painting on, and that loses most of it. So I think that now works. So let's just see the before and after on that using the turn off the brush adjustment. From there to there, that's pulled in that sort of information that I want ready for the black and white conversion. So we've got the adjustments done with it. I probably want a little bit more contrast in here, not much needed, so we'll go with that. Now I'm ready to start doing my my black and white conversion, but I'm going to look at this image first and decide a couple of things about it. Normally the eye goes to the white, which is sort of what we want with this. We want it to go to the smoke and then to see the train coming out of it. But what else am I going to want? I'm going to want this red area. I think that red area ought to be a light colour, and perhaps quite bright to draw the eye to the train with it. And I like the little bits of yellow on here. I think those should be quite bright as well. This area, not so bothered about the greeny areas. So that's what I'm aiming for. Let's have a look at what profiles we've got available to us. So my immediate thought is, what happens if I go with the red filter? That's not bad, actually. I'm now wondering about having that too bright, having seen it on there. When I go to blue and it disappears into it, no. We do need that little bit of contrast with it. And I think orange is probably the closest I want on there. So I'm going to start with the orange filter on there, close that. And now I want these green areas, I think, need to be darkened up to act as a frame. Now I can do it several ways. I could do it with one of my vignettes, or I can do it with the black and white conversion or so. Greens, just bring the, oh, that's not affecting much on there. So why is this not going down? Right, let's find out. Use the sample tool and control it that way. There we go. Oh, it's orange. It must have been bracken on there. Let's try about that light a bit. There we go. That's more what I want down here, but oh dear, we've lost the yellow up in this section, which I did want to preserve as light colours. So how are we going to do it? Well, because of that, I bring that up, because I like that little speckledy effect on there. I don't want to lose it, but I do want to lose it in this section. I'm going to try something. I don't know whether this is going to work because I've never done this one before, which is a local brush adjustment, but just down in this area. And I'm going to try, how am I going to do it? I'm going to do it by just using the highlights. So let's affect that, reset that, bring the highlights right down, we bring the flow down on here, and let's see if I can't just darken those up a little bit. Actually, that's not making any difference whatsoever. Push the flow right up and see whether that does. No, it's not. I'm going to have to do it with the exposure. Yeah, that's doing it a little bit better. And just a little bit down there. Now, I'm doing this a little bit quick, Bill, just to show you what I mean on there. And over on this side, I am going to use the flow down. That's more the sort of thing. I just want to darken that down a little bit, just so that the eye doesn't get drawn to those edges there. So we've got that. The final thing I would do with this image, and I know, Bill, you're waiting for this one, it's the good old vignette. So just bring that down. That's gone a bit too dark there, so I know I'm not going to do that. As ever with my vignettes, I bring it in too far, I feather it off, I adjust the midpoint in to get that to what I want it to be, and indeed the roundness. So something like that. Now at this point, I put my mouse over the amount, but without looking at it, I start moving the slider out until I think the vignette's gone. And that seems to be about it. So that's going to be there. And I'm still minus 31. I'll show you the effect of it with and without. Oh, wrong control. With and without. So I think that just helps pull the eye into the train. So that would be my conversion on there. With it being a steam train, there is one other thing you could do with it, and that's a split tone. And the split tone, the easiest thing to do is to whack your saturation, the two saturation sliders right up, because that then allows you to see what colour you're working with, and then move that into something like the low 40s, high 30s, and similarly with this. I'll go higher on there, and now we can control the saturation and just bring it down very, very slightly on there, just to give that slight hint of a split tone on there. And that would be my conversion of that image. So before and after, before, after. So that would be my effect with it, and what I would attempt to do with that image. Is a little bit noisy up there with all the pushing and pulling I've done with the tones on it, so might just do a little bit of noise reduction up there. So detail. Now, was it colour noise? Could I just get away with this on colour? Let's zoom in. And get rid of some of it, just on there, a little bit on the luminance noise, just to try and sort that out on it. And therefore, then sharpening, we need to sharpen it. Hold the Alt key when sharpening and do the amount, and we can see it converts it to true black and white when we do the sharpening, so I can see what's up a little bit with the radius on there. Now, radius is how far out from the edge that we go. We don't want to go too far with it, out to something like that. Detail is how hard it searches for those edges, and we want a mid-tone. So if I go all the way up, you can start to see it bringing out edges that don't matter, which is a bit of noise. So I'm just going to bring that to about there. Then the masking is the bit that does all the work, and again holding the Alt, the areas which are white are the bits which are having the sharpening applied. So we adjust the edges to it, and we end up with something looking like that. So one finished image on there. Right, okay. I think I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint slides at this point, and I'm going to have a look at the chat to see where we are at and see what you've all been talking about while I've been doing this. Right. Right, okay, so yeah, you're all still watching, good. John likes the conversion with the guy with the stick. Didn't have his permission. Slap wrists on there. Now, I'm a big believer in trying to get people's permission. I'm going to do a session in a couple of weeks' time on street photography, and I'm going to talk about this in more detail, about getting permission and how you can solve the problem of people posing when you've asked permission and things like that. So 2 weeks' time, if all goes to plan, where we'll have a session on street photography, and we'll cover some of those things at that point on there. Right, okay, so let's move on. Yeah, the 12020 challenge. This week, I've got one from Kev. Thanks to everyone who has submitted. Hopefully the one from Peter will come in for next week. If not, well, Anybody else wants to have a go? The instructions are on one of the earlier live streams. The basic summary is you've got 2 hours, 120 minutes to take 20 photos, but the catch is no deletions, got to be consecutive files, no retakes, so every image needs to be a separate subject, and you agree to show the images. In other words, you send them to me and I make a slideshow of them and I talk about them as part of the live stream. So here we go. Kev did his all about in and around a wall, which is the complex that his studio is in. So let me show you the slideshow with those in. And Kev's just put in the chat, oh dear, definitely not my best shots in the 120/20. Took some time to warm up, then started to panic that time was ticking. Yep. That's the point of the 120/20 challenge. It's all about having the pressure on you and how you cope under pressure. So what I would say to those of you who found the pressure hard, and there's a few who've said you might have another go at it. If you do have another go, then great, do, and let me have your second attempt, and I'll show those as well. So let me show you the slideshow. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of Kev's images, and he's being a little bit harsh on himself. Actually, they're not bad. Here's the images. Let me show you. Thank you, Kev, for that. And actually, I like this set. I like all of the ones that people have submitted, but I think you're being a bit harsh on yourself at times. There are some good shots in here, some really good shots, and interesting ideas. I just want to read Kev's notes actually for some of this. He said. He used a number of different lenses, but mostly using Velvia colour renditions for more punchy colours. I like Velvia in the old film days. He decided to shoot in and around his studio while he was waiting for somebody to turn up for a studio hire, and then decided to show how the area is a complete mishmash of old and new. And that does come through on the images, Kev, on there. And then he's got notes on every single image. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to pick up on a couple and make a few comments and read out Kev's notes on them as well. And he says at the end of his notes, things I've learned. I should have been more patient in choosing my shot and had more of a structured plan before starting. Plus, he says, I really need to clean my sensor before starting. Yep, we've all been there, Kev. We've all been there with that one. Right, just looking at some of these images that we've got here. I like this one. He said there's a model agency near the studio. His notes say, my floor of the building is home to one of Manchester's larger modelling agencies, and one of the walls is covered in all their Polaroids. And I think that's lovely. And what I like about this is the fact that you've effectively chosen your hero Polaroid when creating the shot. And whenever you're photographing these types of things, you should always have a hero item on there, the one that is drawing attention to. So in this case, E. Barton, you're the hero. Moving through, which were the others I wanted to comment about. I'm going to comment about this one, partly because I know that Kev's going to be sitting there with his hands in his head in his hands at this point. But what he says about it was this was a real fail, fake flowers wrapped around the mill's pipework. I don't think it's a complete fail at all. Yeah, this side doesn't add much to it, but this side does work well. Where this image would work, this would actually work as a good stock image, because this the negative space, the out of focus space, would be great for putting text over. So, for example, if you were putting together your own slideshow of your 120 and you wanted a title slide, you could use this as that and put the text over it. Yeah, that highlights a bit of an issue there, but we can darken that down and that would then work. So it's not all a fail on that one at all by any means with it. Looking at some of the exterior shots, well, not exterior, it's actually part of the studios, I think. Quite like this. It gives a context, and I think the notes just say back home at the entrance to A1. So yeah, it's an interesting shot, and it just feels as though with the whole set that we're on a journey round. And of the exterior spaces, I think some work better than others. I sort of like this one. The fence, I think, gets in the way a little bit, but there's not a lot you could do about that. I'd like to have seen a little bit more of the building at this end, the overhang on it. Again, personal preference, but I do like that distorted view with it on there. And the last one I want to talk about is this one, the self-portrait. And considering you got one shot to do this, I think you were incredibly brave to try it. And the notes say, I'm back in the studio, so finished with a selfie by putting my camera on a tripod with a timer. I actually know all the settings to use for my lights and camera, so not surprised this is probably the best image. I would say, yeah, it probably is the best image on there, but it's not just to do with knowing all the settings for that. It's the fact that you managed to get it in perfect focus as well, and that's really tough with selfies. So kudos to you for that, Kev, and thanks for sharing the images, and thank you for the lessons that you've learned on it, and I hope you did find it helpful as an exercise. And I would say to you and to everyone who's taken part in it, those lessons that you learned about thinking about your shot before you take it, which you have to do when you're doing this challenge, try to apply that to the rest of your photography. So as you're creating images, even though you know you can retake it, if you pause and think about your shot, and I bet most of you, when you were setting up, you were looking at all the details in your shot before you hit the shutter release, because you knew you had one shot to get it right. Well, if you apply that principle in general to your photography, then you'll have far fewer images to have to search through and edit. Your hit rate will be much better and your photography will improve. So hopefully that's helped everyone who's taken part, and hopefully one final one, hopefully not the final one, but hopefully I'll have one more to show you next week on there. So moving on, what have we got? More black and white conversions. Oh heck, the time's going on again. I'm over an hour again. Right. Photoshop. What am I going to show you in Photoshop and conversions? Actually, before I do that, whilst let me get up on the screen the chat. Oh, we've got a few things appearing in the chat I need to go and have a look at. And wow, lots appeared. Yeah, Andy Grady definitely intends to do it again, though he hasn't had chance yet. Yeah, good. People are saying it's a good set, Kev. Just take it on there. And Kev was saying about how he got the focus on there, was setting the mannequin, then swapped out as the timer counted down. I'll tell you how I do it. I use a lighting stand, and I put a mark on the floor, put the center of the lighting stand over the mark, focus up on that, and then I know the camera is focused on that plane. I can then just move the lighting stand out of the way, and so long as I stand on that mark, I'm going to be in focus. It would be how I do it on there. Right, okay, let's back over to Photoshop. Yeah, I'm going to try and pick a few images to go over in Photoshop. Now, where are we? I've lost where I am. Not that set. Sorry, just a moment. Yeah, right, okay, got it, right. So we are, I just need to change a couple of things on here, that's better. Right, here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and do a conversion in Photoshop just to show you how that works. And the image I'm going to do is this one of Jill Bembo's, possibly one of Carol Newsham's as well on there. So if I pick those two and I say open it in edit in Photoshop. Right, now just to let people know, I know the image from Jill is very low resolution on there. It's the the only version that she got of it, but I'm going to work with that anyway because the principles are the same anyway. Right, so let me go over to Jill's first on this, and actually before I do, let me just talk about the tools in Photoshop. We've got various tools available to us. Tone mapping, using adjustment layers, using a tone mapping adjustment layer, sorry, black and white adjustment layers, using curves, and then masking to create certain effects on here. So right, let's first of all start by, as ever, dealing with the composition first. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to square everything up first. So we'll do that with the crop tool, and then just square up those effects. So we need to get the tower more or less square on. So we end up with something like that would be our image. This is a weird one because now I've straightened that, and I've definitely straightened the tower and the cross there. The boat and the horizon look wrong. They're not. It's just the way, the angle that things are at. But that's how it is on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a couple of different tools on here. I'm going to use a couple of different adjustment layers. So the first one that I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a tone map, gradient map, sorry. I always want to call them tone maps. Gradient map tool. It's, for some reason with mine, it always goes to that. I then need to select it, choose the basics, and I want the black and white one. And that allows me if I click on one of those, then I've got the point there. I can control how that works, how I want the tones to map on there in terms of the contrast with it. So I'm going to come down approximately down here like that, and it is just an estimate at this stage. So that's the first layer that I'm going to need in that conversion. What have I just clicked? No. Right, what? Do that again. That window had suddenly gone large. Let's sort this out. Sorry about this, folks. Basics. There. Click on there. And then just lighten. Oh! This is why I do my black and white conversions in Lightroom, because I do find it quite tricky doing this in Photoshop. But yeah, we do the gradient map on there, and okay, that. Next adjustment layer I want is the black and white adjustment layer. So we do the black and white. Now this looks familiar to you. I'm just going to take the gradient map off while I work on this one there. This allows you to control the effects of different ones, as we've seen before. So I can now control the different areas of it. This tool up here allows me to pick a colour, and bizarrely it's left and right this time. So I want to lighten that up, which it reckons is in the blues. A little bit on the cyans and well on there. And that's sort of getting me in the right direction with it. Lightening up the reds with that. And now, if I put the gradient map in as well, we can see the difference that makes. We go from there to that. And that's sort of getting the sort of the image looking right. So our area of interest could do with being a little bit brighter. So that the gradient maps, yeah, I need to just adjust the gradient map. So again, sort out where that midpoint is, just to lighten things a fraction maybe. darken that down. Oh, sorry. You wouldn't believe this is actually one of the ones I practiced, and I'm struggling with it. Yeah, we get something like that on there. So we've got that. Next, we want to put a vignette on here. How do we do that? Well, I'm going to use a polygonal lasso tool, and making sure I've got something like a 300 pixel feather, I'm going to just then very roughly draw around here, and I'm deliberately trying to make sure that boat is more in the area. Right, okay. Because we've got such a small image, the 300's not done it, so Control D to unselect anyway. I'll do that again. I'm going to have to do it down at something like 100. I'll try 100 and see whether I can get this to work. It's because the image is so small that it's sort of struggling with it. That's better. That's the sort of effect I was looking for. So now I've got that. What I can do is I can add another adjustment layer, this time a curves adjustment layer over the top, and I can then adjust that. So actually what I want to do is darken the outside, so I'll just pull that down temporarily, and then I go onto the mask and Control I inverts the mask on there. So over onto here, and we can see I've got control of the edges now to give me that vignette effect on here. And I can control it however I want to give me the effect. So I've got something like that with it, and then before and after with the vignette on there. So that's the sort of way I would do a black and white conversion with that image. Let's have a look at the other one. And this one I haven't tried before to do a black and white conversion on, and it's a little bit larger. So let's go to full screen on it. And first of all, as with all of these, I want to get the exposure right first. So I'm going to put this time a curves layer just to adjust the exposure a little bit and to brighten it up just slightly. Bring that up, down, make it just a little bit more contrasty, something like that. I'm going to work with on here. So right, what do I need to do with it? Well, first of all, I need to straighten it up. And this is it's an interesting one to try and straighten, because what do we straighten to? Well, we've got obviously the background's tilting. We've got this line of the table. Now, I know when Carol did this, she used the line of the table to straighten it. Actually, not the right thing. The only thing that we've got that's a true horizontal or vertical is actually the level of the beer on there. So this is where beer is important. So I go to the crop tool, and I'm just going to turn that round until the beer is vertical, and actually that's flat, that's vertical, and look at these walls, they are also spot on because of it. And I can bring that crop down to about there and up to about here. So that's going to be my crop for this image on there. So now let's bring out those the same old tools as we had before. Let's bring in the gradient map. And I wish that default would reset itself. So we go to there, and I'm going to need to brighten this a little bit. So bring that down. Oh, too far. Somewhere. Oh. Right, so we've got that. Okay, then I'm going to do the black and white adjustment, turn that off, do the black and white adjustment layer on here. And what I want to try and do is just lighten the skin slightly because it's very shadowy and I'm losing detail. But don't want to do it too much. But if I just do that, just a fraction, that's about all I need on there with that. And with the patterns on the shirt, let's see what happens if I play around with this. I can darken down that background a little bit. We've got cyans there in there as well, bring that down a bit. So I'm find out what's changing with the shirt. Right, we've got a little bit of purple in the shirt. I can bring that down. Greens. No, we've got no greens. And yeah, that was the one I was looking for. Just darkening down the yellows just a touch on there. And I've got to be careful with the reds because that's the skin tones in there. So that would be my black and white on there. Combine it with the gradient map, and the gradient map's undone a lot of that. So right, let's look at that gradient map and see what we need to change. And this is where I much prefer doing it in Lightroom. And that, which way are we going? So we end up with something like that. I would like to do a slight adjustment on the face and brighten that. So over the top of all this, another adjustment layer, and it's going to be a curves one. But this time I'm going to use, I'm just going to lighten everything up to about there, but I only want it to apply to around the face. So first of all, I'm going to fill that in with black on the mask. So that's in there, and then I can use a brush and use a reasonable size brush and an opacity down to about 50, and I can just start to, with a white brush, I can just start to paint that back in on the face just to bring that detail back. And the more I paint, you'll see on here, the lighter it gets, the more my adjustment applies. So we've done that. So that would be about there. And then finally, I would like a vignette on it. So we'll do the same thing I did before. And I'm just going to bring it round like that. And again, an adjustment layer with curves. And of course, I've got it the wrong way around. So then Control I to do that. And then, as you can see, I'm just affecting the edge and providing the vignette on there. Yeah. I would much prefer to do this in Lightroom, but I wanted to show you the techniques on there. And oh boy, right, okay, I'm going to leave that now and save and save and exit from there. Right, let's have a look at the chat, see what's been going on in my absence. Right, okay. Oh, nothing else in the chat. Right, great. Okay, so moving on. Snapseed, right. Let me do this and I'm going to finish with this. So I thought this might be the case, which is why I said this last week for black and white portrait images, because next week I'm going to do portraits. So I will put those black and white portraits into my portrait section for feedback on those. So sorry if you're waiting for one of those, I will do those next week. But I want to do the Snapseed if the technology will let me. So I just need to set up a couple of things on here. So just bear with me a moment while I get this going on here. So screen mirroring, right. And I have to reset things on here. There we go. We have a phone on the screen. So let's hope this all works. So now I'm going to go into a tool called Snapseed. Let me just move windows around on here so I can actually see what's going on a little bit better. Right, and you can still see everything. I can see the chat. Right, I go into Snapseed. Now, Snapseed is a free application. It's one to download. It's produced by the same company that produced Nik Effects. So it's effectively a free version of Nik Effects. It's a bit more limited than that, but let's... so I hit the cross to load an image. And I'm going to work with, oh, come on, where is it? What? I actually went through this beforehand just to check I knew what I was doing, and I can't find the flipping image now. Whoa. Open from the device. All right, come on. Camera roll. There we go, got it. Right, this is an image that Peter sent me. And I chose one of Peter's images because I don't think you're a Lightroom user, are you, Peter? So I thought this would be helpful to you to know what other tools are available. So, opening Snapseed, I'm going to do a few things. Now, remember the same principles as before. Get your exposure right and do those sort of corrections first. So, Tools and Tune Image. And the way Snapseed works is as I move my finger up and down, it gives me a menu. And I'm going to select Shadows on there. And then as I go left and right, I'm lightening the shadows or I'm darkening the shadows. And if you look at the top of the screen, you can see that bar as I'm doing it. So I'm trying to lighten them so that it's this area here shows up on there. So just do that. I'm going to go to the general exposure, which is actually called brightness on here. Just give that a little bit of a tweak, and you can do a before and after by just resting a finger on and off. So you can see the change that's been made on there with that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to OK those changes, and I'm now going to pick a different tool. I'm going to sort the perspective out on it. We can see it's tilting inwards, and you can see the controls on there allow me to go up and down. If I go up, down, we can tilt it back, and we can tilt it forward until it's nice and straight. And I think that's the position I need for it on there. And you can see how it's cropped in as I've done that. So I will OK on there. Now I want to try and bring some detail out with this. So what I'm going to do is use another tool, which is the Details tool. And I've got here sharpening and structure. Structure's great. It's a sort of clarity, texture, all those sort of things combined from Lightroom. And as I go up, you can see the effect that that's had on it. I can go too far. In fact, it works quite nicely with a fair bit on there. And it's almost an HDR type effect on there. Actually, I can see it a lot better on my screen over there than I can on here. So that's got me that far with it. And everything's looking quite good at that point. So again, I'll OK that. Right, so now, what am I going to do next? Now, what I want to do is, let's do the black and white. Actually, no, let's go to, let's go to the black and white conversion at this point, which is, I need to scroll up, it's in here somewhere. I do have trouble sometimes looking through lists, partly because I'm dyslexic. Black and white, that's the one I want. And what we've got, we can't control individual channels with black and white conversion with this. We've got very limited things. We've got graying, contrast and brightness. That's all we have. But what we do have are a couple of things down here. We've got some different presets. So a darkened sky one, a film one, a dark one, which is a little bit too dark, a bright version, and a contrast version, and of course neutral, which is blur. So I'm going to go with film one, which probably goes too much with the grain. So what I want to do now is select grain, and then just bring that right down, because I like a nice smooth thing, but I do like the contrast that gives. So contrast, and I can bring contrast up a little bit. I've just got to be careful not to lose those details I found. And then brightness, and just get that about right. So that's looking quite good to me as a black and white conversion on here. I've just noticed a comment coming in from Peter. Will Snapseed work on the computer? Right, I don't know. I think there is a version for Windows. You'll have to have a look into it. I don't know whether they've got rid of it or not, but do have a search for it. It's not one I've tried to use, because if I'm working on the computer, I would use different tools on there. So the final thing on here, I'm going to OK that, is of course a vignette. And here we go, the vignette. And what have we got available? We've got inner brightness, outer brightness. So the outer brightness, you can bring it right down, it's too far. So again, I'm going to do my usual thing. I'll think, where do I need it? Probably about there. And that's with and without, by just holding the image, takes it on and off. So that's the sort of effect I want with that. Okay. And with that, I think is probably the conversion I would do there. But I wanted to include that because I know some of you aren't Lightroom users. I think John Barton, you do a little bit more with tablets and iPhones and things. So have a look at this. Kev Pack has confirmed this is available for Windows and Mac. Right. Good to know that. Thank you, Kev, for checking that one. I knew it was available on Android as well as iOS. I'm an iPhone user on there. Just to say one final thing on this, exporting. You've got lots of options here for exporting. Save, well, they say it overwrites the original image. I'm not quite sure how it does that. Save a copy or export just creates a file with all the changes baked in. That tends to be what I do actually, although if I wanted to thought I might want to go back to something, I'd use save as copy, and you can see it's storing all the changes that I did so that it's non-destructive as well. And not only that, I could say share. It's doing all those, and I can actually post it directly to Facebook. So Facebook, and so live demo of Snapseed, and I want to select the group, and I'm not sure how I do that on here. That I want to push it to. No, not sure how I to my news feed. Group. That's the one I want. That's where I want it to go, and I want to share it. So if you want to see it in all its glory, the image is up on my on the Facebook group. So right, okay, that's all worked. Let me head over onto there. At this point, let's move on because time's run out. I've well and truly gone over. I'm not going to look at any more of your images. What have we got in the Q&A? Anything on there? Because I'm losing people. I can see you going. Don't want to do that. We've got nothing more in the chat that I want to talk about on there. So just to wrap up, thank you for watching. Sorry it's been another long one. Next week we are going to look at portraiture. So that's why this week's theme of black and white portraiture, I thought if I can get them in this week I will, but I can't, so they're going to go over to next week. So any other portraits, stick them in the group during the week. Don't forget to subscribe, comment and like. And just that reminder, if anyone fancies buying me a cuppa as a way of saying thank you for these live streams, your name will be on the mug next week on there. So thank you to John this week who sponsored my cup of tea. Next week, maybe a 3-minute challenge, depends what else I've got. But we're looking at portraiture and some techniques, and I'm going to, there's an image that was posted on the Facebook group during the week which showed a shattered image where the different shards were pulled in different ways, a portrait. I'm going to show you how to create that effect in Photoshop next week. So that's all the plan for next week. Sorry it was a long one, folks. See you next Sunday evening at 7 o'clock. Bye. 7 o'clock? 7:30. Bye for now. Right, this is the time I do the alternative ending for the cut down version. So here we go. You've just been watching this cut down version of Live from me in studio. We've been looking at black and white images. The full detail of this is now in my academy. We've just got the highlights here. Some of it has been extracted and will also be on the YouTube feeds, possibly over on my Lightroom channel. Don't forget to subscribe to that. If you want to join the academy, the details for that are over my shoulder. But until next time, thanks for watching and keep making great images. Bye for now.